Hello, welcome to the Analyst Inside Cricket with me, Simon Hughes.
And I'm Simon Mann.
The big news is that I'm leading our Dream 11 challenge after picking our select T20 11s and 3 days of the tournament. I'm leading. My select 11 is doing better than yours and better than Deep Dasgupta's. Not by much, and it's early days.
It is early days, Yoz. If you're celebrating already, I mean, is he who laughs last longest? Anyway, yeah, some victories and defeats in the first few games for our select 11. I thought Majib, actually, when he picked up those 2 early wickets, he was one of my selections, was going to not exactly run through New Zealand, but help Afghanistan on the way to victory. It was a really significant victory for New Zealand, because I went for Afghanistan as semi-finalists, and so did you as well. But I think that's going to be unlikely now unless we get, well, I mean, they're still in it. They've got to beat South Africa. A really big game on Wednesday morning UK time, 5:30 start for that one. But it's a really significant match. And actually, in that group, the really significant games have been played early on, because you've had that head-to-head between Afghanistan and New Zealand, which New Zealand, I thought, they played really well in to win that match, especially from the position they were in. They were something like 20% to win it when Majid took those 2 wickets, but they actually won the game quite comfortably. So Afghanistan are now under a bit of pressure. South Africa winning today. But I mean, the big news really, Yoz, I mean, you are leading in the Dream 11 Challenge early days, but the big news is, surprise, surprise, Deep Dasgupta mentioned it last week, or he implied it, in the India-Pakistan is on. It's a match that it's too lucrative a match not to
Well,
play,
yes.
basically. That's the bottom line.
No, it is. And clearly a bit of brinkmanship from the Bangladeshis has helped the situation, where they said, look, thank you to Pakistan for your support in our cause, but we think you should play. We think you should play India. And so it sounds as if they've agreed to it now. And you're right. I mean, sort of financially, how can either team or either the world game cannot afford for this match to not go ahead? You're talking several hundred million to the game in general, the world game, if that match gets canned, and therefore the broadcasters want their money back. So it's a big story, and thank goodness for the tournament really as well, because it is a great match to watch, and it's exciting, and obviously it's important for the tournament as well. So great news that they've all come to their senses in the end. I think it's a shame Bangladesh are missing as well, because there's been some great matches already. Nearly a couple of upsets with junior teams or less well-known teams giving their senior counterparts a bit of a scare. Not least England, Nepal. We'll talk about that. I mean, just going back to our sort of little 3-way challenge and the players we picked. Thank goodness, from India's point of view, that the man we all picked in our Dream 11s, Surya Kumar Yadav, came to India's rescue against the USA, who, of course, have already beaten Pakistan in this format when that match was played in the USA, and they nearly took an even bigger victim. They had India 66 for 7 at one point. But India managed to recover, and obviously Surya Kumar Yadav, with his 80-odd runs, got them up to, in the end, a respectable score. But otherwise, that would have been quite embarrassing, wouldn't it?
Quite embarrassing. It'd been one of the biggest upsets in the history of world sport, wouldn't it? Certainly, I mean, there have been some upsets in the history of cricket. You think back to some of them. I mean, England losing to Netherlands at Lords was a pretty upset. England losing to Ireland in Bangalore in the 2011 World Cup. That was a big upset. There've been others as well. I remember when Bangladesh first beat Australia in a one-day international. That was before the Ashes in 2005. I mean, there were people talking at the time there was that the biggest upset in the history of sport. Because remember, Australia were, they were an absolute crack team, and they lost that match. There have been other games as well. I mean, Kenya beating West Indies in the 1996 World Cup, and that felt seismic at the time. I mean, India losing at home to the USA in the T20 World Cup, huge favourites for the tournament, losing at home, the defending champions, to the USA. That would have been quite something. But as often is the case in these situations, it didn't quite happen. And obviously, that was the same with England and Nepal as well. I mean, just very quickly going back to the India-Pakistan thing, I mean, we should just dwell on it a moment. And Bangladesh have got a few concessions, haven't they, as well? No penalty for withdrawing from the tournament, and also hosting rights for an ICC tournament before 2031. So, I mean, there's been a lot of horse trading that's gone on to sort everyone out and to make this happen. But it does strike me, Oz, cricket, the game of cricket, the world game, surely it cannot be right that one match is so important to the economics of the world game. I mean, they rests on this fixture being played. It can't be right for the game. I mean, it's all a bit skewed, isn't it? I mean, it is an
Yeah,
important. It is an important game, but
it's a weird situation, isn't it? Because the game is sort of expanding and contracting at the same time. You know, the T20 World Cup is a means to spread the game to, you know, some lesser nations that are not so familiar with the cricketing kind of, you know, superstructure, and then giving them a chance for access to playing the top teams, and that's expanding the game. Meanwhile, as you point out, the game is kind of almost centered on the finances of the game are almost centered on India and Pakistan. India for, you know, their wealth and the fact that, you know, they generate so much more broadcast income than any other team, and the India Pakistan game because that is so key to any ICC tournament. So you're talking here about the money that gets shared out amongst the different countries. 600 million gets shared out amongst all the international countries playing cricket, associate nations and full nations. The full nations get the lion's share of it, about 500 million, and the associate nations, the Italies and the Nepals and so on, get about 80 to 100 million between them. But of that 500 million that that the world game gets, that was a Freudian slip. India get to about 230 million. So, you know, they're getting 40% of the income, but obviously generating a huge amount of the income as well. And it does make the game, you know, in a fragile financial state, even though it is sort of expanding at the same time.
yeah, and you're also prey to politics, aren't you? If
Yeah.
one game can be knocked off because of the political situation, the biggest game can be knocked off because of the political situation. It just shows how kind of fragile the whole sort of ecosystem is. And in this situation, clearly people have got round the table and thought, hold on a second, we can't afford to not have this match. There are little things. I talked about this last week on the podcast. I say little things. They're not little things to the people involved. Colombo hotels, who were saying everyone's cancelled. What a massive hit for the Sri Lankan economy, for example. They were. There's a massive ripple down effect. This match not taking place, and actually we saw it, didn't we, in the 2007 World Cup in the Caribbean, when Pakistan and India didn't qualify they got knocked out in the group stage, the first group stage. And it all felt like a big story at the time, shocks, upsets. I think India lost to Bangladesh in one of the opening games of the tournament, didn't make it through. Pakistan, of course, lost to Ireland in that World Cup. And then it completely ruined the tournament, and financially as well for the Caribbean economies, because all the India Pakistan sports cancelled and got their money back, or presumably most of it. And so there's another illustration of the importance of India and Pakistan. Okay, so that wasn't a match between those two teams being called off, but because they didn't qualify, there was a huge knock-on effect. It's weird, isn't it, that context has such a bearing on
Yeah.
the
I
finance.
suppose in a way, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? But in a way, I suppose it's the reason why there's been such a clamour to get USA involved in cricket. Because although they have a small population from a cricketing point of view, it is regarded as the world's second or even first largest sporting market. And this all pales into insignificance against the Super Bowl, where the final of the Super Bowl from yesterday generated, I think I read, $10 billion in advertising revenue and sponsorship. So it's insane, the scale of the US sort of economy from a sporting power point of view. And if you can get them really sucked into the cricket world, you have got there a strong sporting economy to help, almost take the emphasis away or the reliance away from India. So it's quite a big thing to kind of get them involved. And they nearly did beat India. And there was some quite clever tactics actually by the USA players. They bowled a lot wide to the Indian left-handers, the dominant left-handers, several of whom we picked in our Dream 11s. Abhishek Sharma was one, Kishan was another, and a third one was Tilak Varma, the top three Indian left-handers. And they all got them bowling wide outside of stump, got them caught in the sort of cover region or deep cover. So it was quite clever, sort of special tactics that they used, taking almost the stumps out of the equation and just bowling wide outside off, and eventually they holed out on the boundary. But the Indian bowlers did their bit in the end and managed to grind down the USA batters, and they won by 29 runs. So India breathed a sigh of relief. I mean, we should talk about that England-Nepal game, shouldn't we? Because it was a brilliant game, and Nepal have already consumed two senior teams, well, West Indies twice in sort of warm-up matches or matches prior to the tournament. They've beaten the West Indies twice, so they've got a big fish already. But this one, beating England would have been, especially England playing very well too. That would have been such a massive thing for Nepalese cricket and world cricket, actually, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I think there would have been a lot of people, certainly non-England supporters, absolutely willing Nepal on. I mean, absolutely desperate for the upset. I mean, you imagine in Australia, the Australians watching that, they were absolutely rubbing their hands with glee at the prospect of England losing to Nepal, and I'm sure lots of other countries as well. I've been speaking to England supporters as well, and they've also been saying, there's part of me that wanted Nepal to win because it would have been a remarkable story, wouldn't it? Although in the last T20 World Cup, I commentated on their game against South Africa, who of course went to the final, and they lost to South Africa by 1 run. I mean, it was a pulsating finish on a pretty ordinary pitch. It was really low-scoring game, hard work for all the batters. They should have won the match then, and they couldn't get over the line. They lost by 1 run in a match they absolutely should have won. Anyone who saw that game, we thought it was there to win. And South Africa, escaped. It didn't make it, there were no consequences of South Africa if they'd lost because they were already going to qualify. But the significance of the win for Nepal would have been huge. But I mean, they in a live match, first match of the tournament. I mean, they've got a chance. They still have got a chance of making progress through the group, haven't they? Because they could beat the West Indies. They've got Scotland in the group as well, and they've got Italy. So if they were to win their next 3 matches, there's a very good chance that they would go through to the Super 8 stage. So there's still a great incentive for them. But if they'd beaten England, then you think, well, almost certainly they would have qualified. But it was a great opportunity. And where did it not quite go?
Well, I mean, listen, they batted well, didn't they? They were chasing 180, and England did well, by the way. I mean, to get to that score in the end, because they slightly lost their way. I thought Jacob Bethel batted beautifully, actually. Played a really stylish innings. So did Harry Brook. Harry Brook sort of really putting all those sort of traumas and controversies out of his mind and able to focus really well on just, putting bat to ball, which was superb. And then really, they sort of faltered a bit, didn't they? And then it was Will Jacks who took 20 odd off the last over and got England to, a decent 180. But then the Nepalese opening pair attacked really well. Kushal Bertel was aggressive, made a quick fire 29. And in the middle order, they had Dipindra Singh Arig. So he made 44 from 29 balls as well. So, they had 2 good, solid batters there. But Lokesh Bam, beautifully named. I think Stephen Finn called his name onomatopoeic, and he was right there because he put some whack into the bam, didn't he? I mean, he really did power the ball over the line a few times, and he looked like he was going to win it for Nepal at one point, didn't he? What was the equation with 3 overs to go?
Well, 3 overs to go, they wanted 46. 5 overs to go, they wanted 60 to win. I mean, it felt like a tall order from there. 60 off the last 5 overs, 46 off 3 overs. That Jofra Archer over he kind of bowled them back into the contest, and he was hit for 3 sixes. There were all, other runs in the over as well. It wasn't a great over from Archer. There was one ball that was fullish kind of length that was hit down the ground for 6, and then the slower balls into the pitch that were forced away. What about? I mean, it sounds like old codgers talking. What about bowling Yorkers, Yoles?
Well, look, I know, I agree with you. It's always the best percentage ball, unless you have got a Joss Butler who is brilliant at playing the ramp shot, and there's a few others around, obviously, but you know that ramp shot is a big risk. You're diving across outside off stump. You're leaving your stumps exposed. It only needs a little bit of ill timing or slightly wrong swing of the bat, and your stumps are all over the place. So I really think the Yorker still should be the banker. And the trouble I think with Jofra is, I mean, he's a clever bowler, of course, and he's done so much, very well over his white ball career. But I think his sort of leg cutter roller slower ball is just, it's not deceptive enough. The thing about slower balls, and this is why someone like Sam Curran can be effective, is because his arm is really quick. When he bowls his quicker ball, his arm comes over really fast. When he bowls his slower ball, it also comes over fast, but the ball comes out slower because of the change of wrist position and the fact that he's bringing his hand down the side of the ball and so on. I'm not necessarily talking about his moon ball, but his cutters and things like that. When Archer doesn't have a quick arm particularly. Some bowlers do have, fast bowlers just have a quick arm. I was one, funnily enough. I had a very fast arm, and therefore my slower ball, which came out slower but with the same arm speed, was quite deceptive. And that's why Curran slow balls work. But Archer, his arm comes over at the same speed, roughly. So even though he's putting spin on the ball and reducing its pace, it isn't as deceptive. The trouble is, if you bowl that on a length on the stumps, and a batter sets himself, he can just muscle that over mid wicket. So what he was trying to do was bowl a bit wider outside off stump, and stop the batter from being able to access the leg side. But of course, they just step across, and still manage to manhandle it over the leg side. Yeah, I mean, a Yorker would have been a much better option. It's easy to say that in hindsight, but it certainly worked for Sam Curran in that brilliant last over, and actually it worked for Luke Wood as well. His over under massive pressure. Now, I don't think you can underestimate the difficulty actually of coming on to bowl with that one over when you haven't bowled for probably an hour. Certainly in Luke Wood's case, possibly, Curran had bowled, in various stages, but if you haven't bowled for sort of 20 minutes and then you've got to come on and, nail those Yorkers straight away, it's pretty tough to do. Credit to Wood, because although he bowled 2 or 3 wides, he did kind of keep his head, and he managed to keep that full length and finally got a wicket off the last ball. And then Curran, I mean, that was absolutely titanically skillful, nerveless final over. He said, didn't he, that it just occurred to him, I think either just before he bowled or, during the over, he remembered that the Ben Stokes, Carlos Brathwaite experience in the Calcutta in 2016 in this tournament, and how Brathwaite, put those 4 sixes away, and Stokes didn't quite get his line and length right. Curran sort of, I think, thought, oh, God, I've got to get it right. And even though they had quite a long conversation in between each ball, him and Harry Brook, I think the kind of the agenda was pretty similar. I'm just going to get it at the batsman's feet. And he said he looked at the batsman's feet as he was running into bowl to make sure he could get that. That's how Lasith Malinga used to practice his Yorkers, isn't it? By putting a pair of trainers on the crease and just aiming at that every time. And that's a good way of doing it. But tremendous by Sam Curran there, actually, because it was 10 to win off the last over. I've been there, 10 to win off the last over, NatWest final, when we all know what happened there, and it wasn't
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, no trouble at all against you, Yoles. But yeah, Sam Curran, it was a fine over. And also as well, there must have been that feeling among the England players, this can't be happening. This can't be happening. We got a reasonable score on the board, they'd have thought. What 180 plus. Will Jack's assault in the final over. Nepal played well, but they felt like they were behind. 60 off 5 felt like a tall order for relatively inexperienced side in a big match like that. But that Archer over, it got them believing again. The pressure on England must have been immense because it would have really upset their tournament. I mean, it might have been the decisive game in them not qualifying, lose to West Indies on Wednesday, and almost certainly out of the tournament. So you could see that suddenly, quite big favourites to make the last four, suddenly all slipping away. So yeah, Curran was superb, held his nerve. I thought some other key points. It's funny, isn't it? Captains always go to a pace bowler to bowl the final over of the innings. I just wonder whether that was the right decision. Curran Casey looked quite hittable in that final over, and Will Jacks hit him for 3 sixes, and ultimately, got England to that 184 score that helped them win the game. I just wonder whether they should have gone with spin in that final over. Irie had one more over to bowl, and he'd done well as well. And his figures were 3 overs, 2 for 23. Okay, he might have gone for a few. He might have been nailed for a 6, but would he have gone for 20 plus? I guess he's the same height, but captains often go for the pace, don't they? When you think, well, I wonder whether spin is the better option. Yeah,
Good
accepting there's
point.
going to be a big shot somewhere, and somebody's going to hit you for 6, but you can kind of live with that a bit. What do you think about that?
No, I think it's a good point, and it's something to certainly consider. And I mean, actually, England tried for a little while, having Dan Mosley or Mousley, however you pronounce it, from Warwickshire. He played a few T20s, didn't he? And they tried him. He bowls these sort of flat, sort of off spinners from round the wicket, right in at the base of the stumps, quite fast, at sort of 60 odd miles an hour. And they tried him, and it worked a couple of games. And then I think one game he got hit, and they sort of ceased with that plan. But it's definitely worth thinking about, because you can just use the pace. If a fast bowler does get his line and length slightly wrong, the pace just takes the ball over the rope. Whereas you have got to make more of the hitting with a spinner. Yeah, so it's difficult, isn't it? You also, another good reason perhaps for having spin is the keeper's up to the stumps, isn't he? For spinners. So if the batsman goes down the wicket and he misses it, he's out. The keeper is ready for a quick return because he's at the stumps already. If they go for a quick single, whatever. I don't know. So I think in some ways, if you could find the right bowler to do it, then it makes a lot of sense. And maybe some of these, lesser nations, less experienced nations, they will find that's the best solution, rather than bowling a guy at 80 miles an hour who perhaps hasn't got quite the command of control that you need, and will go for millions.
Yeah. Another factor in the game, though, right at the end, of course, is that they turned down the single off the
Yeah.
penultimate ball, which meant, it meant that Karen Casey would have been on strike, but you'd only have to hit a 4 to get a super over. I say only. Whereas they put
Yeah.
all the eggs in the 6 hitting basket. They had to hit the last ball for 6, albeit with Bam, on strike. That's a decision you make, I suppose, in the spur of the moment. You back something to happen. When I was watching it, I felt, yeah, take the 1 and go for at least have the option of a 4 off the final
Well,
ball.
you
It's
never
easy,
know. There might be a misfield as well.
yeah. It's easy to say, isn't it? You're watching on. It's not easy hitting a 6 or a 4 off the last ball under pressure to win the match, but that was an issue as well. The other thing that I thought was interesting in the game was Adil Rashid. Now, his record in India is not good, is it? It's not as good as it is elsewhere and overall. And I just wonder whether his type of bowling in India he bowls it very slowly, doesn't he? So
I think that's the key. I think that's exactly why.
he's not picked up by IPL teams, is he, as well?
Yeah.
They're not that keen on him. So I think
No.
they feel that Indian batters would get after him because he does bowl too
Yeah,
slowly. And
I mean, if you
Indians,
look at the exactly right, I think if you look at the successful Indian bowlers in the IPL, the likes of Chakravarti, before him, people like Ashwin, and you know, a number of others, Bishnoi and people like that, who are sort of leg spinners or leg rollers. Rashid Khan, who's been you know, phenomenally successful in the IPL. You know, they do bowl flat, they do bowl quick. I remember when I remember the Rajasthan Royals hiring you'll remember this probably, hiring a 41-year-old local Mumbai cricketer called Kavin Tambe, and the reason they hired him was because he bowled these little dart leg breaks that sort of stuck in the pitch, but he bowled short of the length and sort of skidded it. And you couldn't get underneath him because he was quite a short bowler. He didn't get much bounce, and he sort of skidded it into the base of the stumps, and people couldn't hit him for six, and they couldn't get down the wicket to him because he bowled a little bit short of the length. Those types of bowlers are more effective in India. The slower spinners, you feel they have the time, the batters have the time and the skill to get back and, you know, hit them off the back foot or slog sweep them, and the slog sweep, even a miss it, goes for six.
Yeah, so I mean, it was a tough day for Adi Rashid. I mean, he didn't bowl his full allocation of overs. I was in communication with a friend of mine when we got to the last over. It was, who bowls the last over, Curran or Rashid? And I was thinking, my hunch has got to be Curran. I mean, Rashid just having one of those days. I mean, he could have bowled an absolute Jaffer of an over, couldn't he? Where they just couldn't pick his googly, whatever, and not work out his leg play or googly. But it felt like too big a risk that you could plant him over the rope for a six. You know, 1-6 in that final over, and Nepal would have won, and it would have been one of the great victories, and the whole world would have laughed at England again this winter. But it wasn't quite to be, and it must have been tough for those England players out there on the field. You know, hot night. I mean, tremendous atmosphere from the Nepal supporters as well, and that feeling of, oh, what on earth is going on here? Where it's just slipping away from you. You must have had experiences like that in games where I just can't stop the momentum of this match, and it felt like that for England. I thought the game had gone for them, but somehow they
Managed to rescue it.
recover.
And some great scenes. I posted a couple of images on Instagram, actually. Great scenes in Kathmandu with the crowd in the street watching the game on a big screen. That was great to see. And, you know, Nepal cricket is, if it hasn't already come of age, it came of age that night anyway. And even though they didn't actually win, they put up a great spectacle, and probably sure they gave their fans great hope for future matches and future tournaments. Um, One other point to make about that game, actually, from an England point of view, is in their sort of previous couple of white ball tournaments, there's been an area that they've been deficient in, or at least haven't paid attention to, and that is having left-handed batters and having left-handed bowlers. They've been really noticeable by their absence in the last couple of tournaments. Well, the two or three successful players in that Nepal game, obviously I mentioned Jacob Bethel, an excellent 50, left-handed. Ben Duckett didn't play, but I reckon he might come into the team. And then three of the bowlers, left arm. Obviously, we've mentioned Sam Curran. Luke Wood bowled well up front, and also in that last over, the penultimate over. And also Liam Dawson, left arm spin, was the bowler of the night, 4 overs, 2 for 21. England have finally realised the value of left armers. And when you said that, and left-handed batsmen, and when you said choose between Rashid and Curran for the final over, you know, I just think left armers have that slight advantage, left arm seamers, because against a right hand batter, they can really focus in on trying to get the ball in at sort of middle and leg on that full length, and it just cramps the batsman for room. Whereas a right armer coming from over the wicket, there's a natural angle that a batter could use to help it over the leg side with no swing or anything, because the ball will be naturally angling, and that's what Ben Stokes found famously in Calcutta in 2016. The angle just helped Brathwaite's natural bat swing to whack it over six. So that, you know, I think really valuable having a left armer that can open the bowling, Luke Wood, and can finish up as well with Sam Curran. It's really good, and Dawson too, spinning it the other way. So you've got that option of spin both ways against the batters.
And talk about angles and matchups, things like that. That's presumably why they didn't go with Irie to bowl the final over of England's innings, because they had Jacks. He's an off-break bowler. And they had Jacks, and they had Jofra Archer at the crease. Two right-handers. So that a matchup that would favour England rather than having a slow left armer to bowl against the two right-handers. Anyway, I mean, it was a absolutely belting game. It was a real sort of heart-pumping finish, just watching it, and I think it just caught everyone's attention. The number of messages I was getting about the game. Are you watching this? Yeah, yeah. I mean, what? And it just had that sort of feel from it. This is building up to something remarkable, and it was a wonderful game of T20 cricket, and England just sneaking home. And it was a good weekend for the tournament. I think there's some decent games, and today was a very one-sided day. I think it was a less captivating day today. Big wins for Zimbabwe, for Scotland against Italy, and sadly for Wayne Madsen dislocating his shoulder in that match, and then South Africa, who are one of the more fancied teams in the tournament. A routine win against Canada in the stadium in which the final is going to be played in just under a month's time. But it's fair to say there weren't that many people there, or there weren't as many people there today as going to be there for the final. It must be quite a strange, eerie atmosphere playing in that massive Narendra Modi Stadium. When there might be just a few thousand in. I don't know what the final figure was, but it's been quite hard for players to kind of like get up for the game, especially the South African players, and they did enough today, South Africa. But their big game is going to come on Wednesday when they take on Afghanistan in that stadium.
Yeah. And they're I think 3 or 4 of their matches are in Ahmedabad, aren't they? I think, is that an
Yeah.
advantage? I mean, it's 4, yeah. I mean, that is that an advantage, knowing the conditions, playing several matches in the same ground must be, a slight help actually, and obviously not having to travel as well. So, that's one little kind of advantage that South Africa, I suppose, had, that they might be able to capitalize on. Just to finish, another tournament finished just after our last podcast, the Under-19 World Cup. And I was just totally compelled. I think you were probably flying that day back from your holiday, and I was watching it all day, really, because India v England under-19s. England's the chance of winning their first under-19 World Cup of, 15 years or so. The last time was people like O.A. Shah playing, Rob Key, etc., quite a long time ago. I think it was actually more like 20 years ago, wasn't it? And they were full of buoyant hope after beating Australia in that semi-final, and they played so well there. Thomas Root played an absolute fantastic innings, but they were just taken apart by this extraordinary another left-hander, Vaibhav Suryavanshi, allegedly 14 years and 312 days, I think, when he took England for 175 of 80 balls. I mean, it was the most incredible innings. Let's just, parking aside how old he is, in a way, it doesn't really matter, because his ability, admittedly against under-19 bowlers, was just so far. It was on another planet compared to any other under-19 player that you'll have probably ever seen. It's quite interesting. I talked to his coach afterwards, Zubin Barucha, who, of course, works with the Rajasthan Royals and has helped him, has mentored him. He said, his idol, Suryavanchi's idol, was Brian Lara, who, of course, he hardly ever saw live, if ever, because he was born when Lara pretty much had retired. And the same applies to Yuvraj Singh, who's his other hero. He would have seen him maybe, because Yuvraj actually played a one-day international in 2017 when Suryavanshi was, I don't know, 6 or something. So he might have seen that. But it's interesting that his two idols were people that, were from a previous generation. But there is essences of Lara's batting in his batting. He seems to have almost subliminally put into his game Lara's extravagant periscopic backlift, where he goes right up, tall, pointed to the sky, and then wields it like a scimitar. And the huge follow through that Yuvraj Singh enjoyed, that probably Stuart Broad didn't when he hit those six sixes. And the other thing about him is interesting is that he's got this natural ability to play with his hands away from his body. Um, and there's a theory that coaches talk about the space between your arms and your chest, enabling you to have a full swing of the bat. And the greats have all got it naturally. Um, Sonny Gavaskar had it, Sachin Tendulkar had it, Lara had it, AB de Villiers actually had it. It's sort of not playing it as this sort of conventional idea. You have to have your arms and your elbows close to your chest, but actually, most of the great, certainly attacking batsmen, have their arms and their elbows slightly away from their chest to enable a fuller swing of the bat. And so there's various aspects of Suryavanchi's batting which kind of mark him out as something quite exceptional. The power he's got, with that full backlift and a fantastic sort of transfer of weight into the shot, it's amazing. He's hitting these sixes way over the boundary, right into sort of over the spectators. 15 sixes he hit off of England in that innings. And of course, it's all very well to say, oh, he's only under 19s, but he's done it in the IPL as well. He did it last year in the IPL, scored 100 off something like 35 balls. It was 35 balls. So he scored the second fastest 100 ever in the IPL when he was aged, 14. And now he's done it to England under 19s. I mean, quite incredible.
Yeah, I mean, there's some discussion about his age, isn't there? Inevitably, you think, well, how can a 14-year-old do that? I mean, even if he were 17 or 18, it's still pretty special, isn't it?
Yeah.
What he's done,
Yeah.
to do that in an under 19 World Cup final, and also to do it in the IPL as well. I remember watching Shane Warne bowl the ball of the century to Mike Gatting and thinking, oh, aye, England are
Yeah.
in for some trouble for the next, 10, 15 years or whatever. And you can't help but watch Suryavanchi and think, well, there are going to be a lot of bowlers who are going to be flayed around in the
Yeah,
next.
I mean, yeah, you're right. And interestingly, what his coach says is that allied to his natural ability is a determination, a desire to practice, and a sort of preparedness to a willingness to adapt as well. So he said he spoke to Suryavanchi the night before the final and said to him, what are you thinking? And Suryavanchi said, well, I'm conscious they're going to probably bowl a lot of short balls to me because I've been out a couple of times pulling, and they're probably going to bowl a lot short to me. So, what's my sort of solution here? Can I play a different way? And he adapted his game to go inside the line, more to off stump, so he could help a short ball round behind square to the fine leg area rather than he'd been out pulling sort of mid wicket square leg. So he thought, well, I'll get across a bit more so I can help the ball finer away from the fielders. And he did that a few times. So, prepared to adapt his game to the circumstances and just also having the advantage of an army of throwdown experts. I mean, in the IPL franchises, there are 10 or 11 people in the coaching staff who are just throwdown experts, who are, specialists with the sidearm, the dog thrower, and even have specific roles. Like one will be the half volley feeder and one will be the short ball feeder, etc. One will do the slower ball, so they have these specific roles. And there are armies of them for these young batters to practice against. So, no shortage of opportunity. What he hasn't done, and just to kind of, throw a bit of caution in, is he hasn't played much red ball cricket. And you can see his ability against the white ball because it doesn't move, so he can hit through it with abandon. Obviously, once you get against a red ball, especially a Duke's ball, which starts to move, then it does require a different approach. It will require a different approach. And, his coach says he hasn't yet quite got the defensive game to go with his incredible attacking game, but he'll probably learn it, won't he?
Yeah. So he hasn't done it on a wet night in Stoke yet then.
That's right. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, it's funny because I was thinking back to my encounter with the great Sachin, my one encounter with him, and I'm just thinking that even though I somehow managed to get him out in the first innings of this county match, Durham against Yorkshire. Sachin was, I think, 19. He'd already made a couple of Test hundreds, and he had this reputation. And I somehow, by some miracle, managed to get him out in the first innings for 20 odd. I just remember thinking in the second innings when he came in, he learned from any of the sort of previous couple of days and the pitch itself and all that. It wasn't a great wicket. He just played in this sort of, there was so much certainty about the way he played, the immaculate defence, the beautiful flow, the rhythm, the reading of line and length, the sort of effortless power of stroke. There was an inevitability, a certainty about it. I remember he got 100 in the second innings and Yorkshire won the game, and we felt sort of powerless to intervene. It looked like that with England against Suryavanshi, didn't it? And it may be like that in the future with England senior players, but a long way to go, obviously. Anyway, an interesting story to follow.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, there's no guarantees. I mean, schoolboy or teenage prodigies, sometimes they can fade away, can't they? They kind of reach a level and then they can't go any further. But I mean, it doesn't necessarily look like it with him. He seems to have so much talent.
By the
Time.
way, just to finish on that, I mean, I am told there is a video, a video interview he gave in 2023, in which he revealed or accidentally revealed that he was about to be 16. And so I think he is a year and a half older than his birth date suggests. And he did actually once sort of, I think now he is close to 17, actually, even though in the records he's 14 years and, 320 days or something. I believe that from the video evidence, which it's in Hindi, there's no translation, but I've been told that from the translation that he did reveal that he was close at the time to 16, so now he's close to 17.
Okay, well, as I said, I mean, he's still a pretty
Still special
player for that age, and still would qualify for under 19, and still remarkable to play that sort of innings.
And he definitely hasn't started shaving.
Yeah. Time flies so quickly, and actually, you said earlier England's under 19 win was about 15 years ago. It was actually 27 years ago that England won the under 19 World Cup. It was back in 1998, the only time they won it. They were runners up in 2022, again losing to India in the Caribbean. So they reached a few semi-finals, and they reached a final this time, but they came up against a huge star of the future. Mind you, they've got one or two very promising players themselves, which is good for the future of English cricket as well. Okay,
Well, yeah, totally. No, I mean, just to say, I mean, Thomas Root, fantastic innings in the semi-final, 100, and even in the final, actually, he played a cameo of 30 odd and played really well, and then he was brilliantly caught. And he looks like a Joe Root with bat speed, lovely balance at the crease and range of shots and so on. Caleb Faulkner from in Middlesex he made 100 in the final. Played superbly as well, hit some lovely shots, looks very calm, looks, quite a dominant player, but, again, quite an adaptable player. Definitely those two in particular, and Ben Mays as well, who did well in the tournament, number 3. Three excellent batters there that England will definitely be able to accommodate before long, I would have thought.
Yeah. Good luck chasing 400 plus in a final, though. Have the game taken away from you. Okay, look, I think we should leave it there. The T20 World Cup is bounding along. 3 games per day. England's next match is against West Indies on Wednesday. I mean, obviously they'd like to win the game, but it's not quite as crucial now, having beaten Nepal, although they've still got to beat Italy and Scotland as well. Scotland losing to West Indies in their opening match and winning today against Italy. Don't take anything for granted. I mean, there might not be any upsets in this World Cup, but we've been close to a few. I suppose it would be quite good to have one or two, wouldn't it? Some genuine upsets to really give the tournament some piquancy. The India-Pakistan match is back on. which is good for the finances of the game. All the treasurers of the various countries will be breathing a huge sigh of relief tonight. Back a bit later in the tournament to discuss how it is progressing. I hope you've enjoyed our chat, and I hope you enjoyed the T20 World Cup as well. I think there's been a lot to like so far, but that's it for now. Thanks very much for listening, and goodbye.